Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piskor.
And we are here today because, Ed, you have a big announcement about your next book that's coming out later in 2023.
Yes, sir.
Let's start with it, man.
All right, man. It's the 10-year anniversary of Hip Hop Family Tree, and in that spirit, we are collecting the 4 volumes of Hip Hop Family Tree into one tidy hardcover kind of omnibus edition. It's going to be the same size as your Marvel omnibuses, so it'll be smaller than the big Hip Hop Family Tree books. We're stripping away all the pinups and things, but it's going to include all of the art I ever made for Hip Hop Family Tree. I drew a bunch of extra material. It's going to be a 36,000 word essay in the back to kind of talk about the material inside the thing, and we're working out a way to have it cost just $50 for the customer. If it gets increased, it shouldn't be increased by much, but it's basically half of what a Marvel omnibus is going to cost. So we're very excited about it. We talked to a lot of retailers last weekend at Comics Pro 2023. Let them know the price point and what we're hoping to do and accomplish with it. They're all really excited. And right now in the description below, there's a pre-order link. Grab yourself a copy. If you have a good comic shop, order it through them. But if not, hit that pre-order link at the bottom, and it's going to be a big book for Christmas. It's going to come out in October, and we want to push it super hard for the hip-hop lovers for their Christmas presents and things.
This is an amazing project. So, we were talking a little off camera, and I say, every year, beginning of the year, you must have started this around a January 1st, 10 years ago. It's one of those things that, it's inspiring to see it pop up each year. Can you talk about Hip Hop Family Tree in the beginning, the origin of this project?
Yeah, totally, man. I was doing these comic strips for boingboing.net, and I sort of talked to them kind of coldly. They knew my work because I saw them as an audience for my WYSIWYG comic when I was self-publishing that material, comic book about computer hackers. And the Boing Boing maker crowd are nothing if not hackers. They would review those self-published comics, and overnight I would sell, $10,000 worth. And then it would be diminishing returns for the following week. But at the end of the week, it would be $20,000 worth of comics that I sold out of my mom's basement at the time of the economic decline, 2008 or thereabouts, man. So I needed to make some extra money anyhow, and had no thoughts that those comics would sell that much. But it put me on their radar. Mark Frauenfelder, Cory Doctorow. And so they knew me. And I got hired by some rival blog thing. It was Engadget to do these comic strips. And they were kind of tech-centric comic strips. And I saw Engadget as a rival to Boing Boing at that era. It's right when blogs started to get press passes and be considered journalists. There was the dividing line. People who were newsmen were really pushing away from blogs having any kind of respect or whatever, but it started to happen, and I saw them as two rivals. So I was like, this Engadget stuff is whack, it's boring. Showed the Boing Boing people what I was doing, and was just like, can I make a comic for you guys on the weekly? Because I clearly see the value of the audience that they had. There's very respected taste at boingboing.net. And they simply said, yes, give us a weekly comic. We could pay this much. It was very nominal. I think it was $150 for a strip. And at the time they had Tom the Dancing Bug. I think they might still have Tom the Dancing Bug. So you know what that is. That's like a Sunday style comic strip. And they had no parameters of what it was, what it could be. I did have editors. So I got this piece of real estate now. And the way that it was set up at the time, there was always a little button on the side of every article to click on. Ed Piskor's Brain Rot is what we called it. And that site was going very viral very regularly at the time because it was the time of WikiLeaks. They had some connection with Julian Assange through probably Cory Doctorow and his work at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Chelsea Manning, formerly Bradley Manning, happened then. This hacker Adrian Lamo like all this stuff was going down, and they were breaking news, and they were going viral often. So there would be these articles that would have 1 million views, and there's a button for Ed Piskor's Brain Rot right next to all of those articles, and people were checking out the strip. But here's the thing, Jimmy, I had no idea of like what to do with that space. I got that space, that amazing real estate that advertisers paid giant sums of money for, but I had no idea of like what the comics should be. And I was floating around, man, for 3 months, man. I did 12 strips of just varying subject matters and stuff. I did one that had a little popularity about just like reminiscing about Nintendo. And then I did this one about the hip-hop comic connection, where I just talked about superhero comics and how they kind of relate with hip-hop in terms of alter egos, battling, collecting habits, things like that. And that hit. There was a way to gauge popularity. Facebook was much more valuable. You could put a link in the search bar and see how many people are sharing that link at the time. And then there was a site called Topsy that you could see how many people and who were tweeting different links. That caught some fire, and it let me know that even though this is like a hacker website, maker website, that I could go down this rabbit hole. And it was January 1st of 2012 when I got the idea to just do a linear story. Like before that, I'm like, I love the landscape of early hip hop. I love graffitied trains and the fashions and things like that. But I was like toying around with maybe doing a noirish crime comic or shit like 100 Bullets type joint. And I'm like, nah, dude, like I know more about rap music than almost any other cartoonist. What I don't know, I can learn, and I could use this vessel to indulge in that. And that was the deal.
It's one of the great marriages, I think, hip hop and comics because of the visuals.
Sure.
You know, and you establish that in that very first kind of strip concept. You know, like superheroes, hip hop. Look at the similarities. But I think of like album covers and the performers. You know, like there's already a visual element there. You mentioned graffiti and on trains, and that connection. It really lends itself, I think, in that way to a comic book, a graphic novel, a visual presentation.
You informed the aesthetic, man. Like props where props is due, and you got that gig from VH1 where you drew like a 2-page comic. Did you have to draw that in layers, Jimmy?
I did. Yeah, there's some pieces to it.
Because they animated this comic that you did, and it was Grandmaster Kaz talking about battling Africa Bambaataa, and did the blackout
70,
factor into that?
Yes.
77?
Yeah.
That factored into it, but you used your kind of old school comics aesthetic. And if you remember, man, I was telling you, I was like, dude, I would read 100 pages of this. I'd read 200 pages of this, like, because the art style coming from that time period made so much sense to like tell the story in that way with those exact visuals. It made sense that you got that gig. And
do you want to hear a full circle kayfabe
Let's do
piece?
Let's do it.
I believe R. Kiko Johnson is who got me that gig. I think he passed off on it because busy or whatever, thought it was a good fit for me or whatever. I'm pretty sure, and it's been some years.
Yeah.
But kayfabe favorite there with Kiko. So
we got to have him on the show again
definitely.
Soon. But that was the deal. Like so it's like you established that aesthetic and did that 2-pager, and I'm like, man, like I just gotta. It was too fucking good to not explore further, you know. So like that was how the aesthetic got established and things. And what it was called Hip Hop Family Tree, a semi-regular feature on the creation of a culture. And I was just gonna do it every once in a while because it took a lot. It took a lot of research, and I had a deadline every Tuesday. So it's like it ultimately became very regular after I posted the first one and saw that like more than 10,000 people tweeted it, more than 10,000 people. It was like 30,000 people on Facebook shared it around and stuff within 2 hours. I put the first 3 pages together, and once again, $150 I made that week. You know what I'm saying, man? I put all my energy to that, and I felt so good about it. And my thought was like, this is a comic. Like I do enough of these. Like that could be something real sexy. But what I would typically do when I put a strip out is I would be working on other stuff and hitting refresh to see just how popular, the past week's strip was or something. When that one came out, I was like, I want to do more. I have to leave. I have to get out of the house, man. So I would, I caught lunch with Tom and somebody else, I forget. But it was an exercise of staying away from the computer. And it was 2 hours from the time that it went live, Like, so I got back home at like 11 a.m. or something. And then I looked. And in 2 hours, more than 10 people on Twitter, 10,000 people on Twitter, more than like 30,000 on Facebook. And I'm like, that fucking rocks, man. It's a bolstering of this idea of like, this feels dope. Like, I think people will dig this. Clear evidence when, my prior strips might never hit 4 figures of tweets or something like that. Might not hit 500, some of them, So it would have been foolish not to have continued down that. And it became very regular every week, man. And sometimes it would be at least 2 pages a week, sometimes 3, for 4.5 years, man, with Primo Real Estate on Boing Boing when it was probably at its most popular.
Man, there's a lot to unpack there. I want to get into the research stuff.
Yeah.
I love the nonfiction avenue, and it's something that I think we'll talk about more as we talk about like selling this, and how stores can continue to sell this and why it's evergreen. Really exciting stuff. But you're also leveraging the tech. Like being able to track like, okay, this is something I'm interested in. I've done a series of these on different topics, and look at the spike on this one.
Yep.
That's so important, I think, to just recognize you've got something here.
Totally.
And something that you're interested in.
And I think that's something that we could all exploit as makers with your own Instagrams. And it will never be the piece that you worked your ass off.
Right.
When you post it on Instagram, the piece that you are necessarily closest to, that will not be the one that hits the viral
Sure.
energy, that will not get, 5,000 hearts or whatever. It'll be something else that's more relatable, more general, maybe more populist, if to use that word. But this was a case where the thing that I was stoked on, and I just felt a buzz making it, and it felt like everything clicked. It's like the only time where it's like, okay, I want to do this. The second time is Cartoonist Kayfabe, to be honest, where it's like, dude, we got to do this. I think it'll work. This was the one time in comics where it's like, okay, I got to do this thing because I think people will dig it. And then they showed up better than everything else.
This is a little bit of an aside, but it's something that always stuck with me. You were doing this on a weekly schedule.
Yeah.
Which is kind of classic cartoonist, as fans of the history of comics, like that's bedrock of comics.
Right.
And I can remember you saying like delivering it each week on deadline, you've had the same feeling as like when you deliver the book to the printer or the publisher.
Totally.
And that always stuck with me as like, man, you got to harness that energy. And you had that, I feel like, throughout this process. We were in contact then, and I would see that kind of like, I don't know, juice, for lack of a better word. But it really felt like, whenever you're clicking, I don't know, man, there's something about it. You can almost sense it.
It takes a long time to make comics, and we got to do a lot of brain hacking to stay enthused and to stay energized while making the comics. So to finish each page is a victory won. Yeah, you didn't, like, you took the time to make that page when you could have been having a lot of fun, especially you work from home, right? Like most cartoonists work from home, and all of your creature comforts are there. So that's a lot of distraction. And certainly in the kind of blue collar setting that I am from, with all the friends that I've had, like, when I was young and things, it's blue collar people that, like, what they couldn't understand why I was just chilling indoors doing this thing. And so I actually had some negativity from my closest people that could have been a defeating thing. I've seen that defeat people. So it's just like you have to build small victories. And when we were talking about that idea, that phenomenon of like, I feel the same feeling of completion as I do like when the book comes out. The book is the ultimate statement. And the hope was that like, that would be the juice, like the book, because obviously it's a much bigger accomplishment. It just felt the same, but like, that's okay because you have that constant energy. And like with this omnibus, that we are like, we're just trying to polish a gem, and like make this thing the best that it can be. Like, we're keeping these babies out there for sure, man, because we built a big audience over 10 years. It might be close to 1 million between the 4 of these things and the box set. But sometimes the store doesn't have a volume 3 or a volume 4 or something, and somebody or the size of the book is it's unwieldy, like on the train or something, and like this is like a more manageable chunk.
It's also it's hip hop. Like, this can be the only comic some people have.
It's true.
And they get there through their interest in hip-hop as opposed to being there at the comic book shop every Wednesday. So having it all in one book makes total sense.
We talk about it a lot. We go through manga a lot. I'm itching to get back to Japan. I was like looking at the calendar. It's like, you know what? Maybe 8 months from now or something. Like the next trip will happen. And as cartoonists and myself in particular, when making comics and choosing the projects that I do, I'm thinking of the wider audience, man, the wider potential audience. So that Hacker comic filled a niche that was untapped and got a lot of promotion within Silicon Valley. And it just so happened at that time Silicon Valley started to create their own kind of entertainment landscapes because they invented podcasting, and the first major podcasts and stuff were tech podcasts. And they had their video shows and all that kind of, RSS feed blogs and stuff. So, like, I was feeding that audience. Hip Hop Family Tree, very clear. It's the rap music joint. When I did X-Men Grand Design and we heard it at that Comics Pro joint from the other retailers, they were so stoked to be able to have an X-Men comic that talked about a lot of the history, just like whole Grand Design. And what do you gravitate to when you read this? What aesthetics do you like in terms of costumes or whatever, or storyline? And then we could feed you the bigger dose of that, because those comics aren't built they're not built for like reading one or something, you know what I'm saying? So my thoughts have always been thinking about everybody else and not just trying to like follow a trend within our very tiny microcosm, so
I also think of it as everything is a selfish filter for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been for years on the kick of like, I'm just buying people for gifts comics.
Yeah.
Like, this is it. This is where I'm planting my flag.
Right.
This is the hill I'm going to die on. And you search for this. You search for books that make sense as gift books.
Right.
And that's really what you're making, I think, more with the Omnibus even than like the Treasury editions,
right.
which when they came out, it was super cool. Love them. Amazing. The format, I'm a fan. But the Omnibus, to me, that's the ultimate gift piece. Especially for the person who buys comics and knows comics and has the ins at the comic shop, and they've got the friends who love music, love hip-hop, love pop culture, but comics are hard to know where to enter.
It's true.
So, you can be that guide at home listening to this or thinking of that guy that you're friends with that you want, what's the perfect gift? A little bit off the beaten path because maybe they don't know comics. This is the thing.
That's the fun thing about the book, too, man, is like getting feedback from people who are like, This is the first comic I've read maybe ever.
Right.
I've gotten feedback where I think it was very clear that it was the first book or maybe only book that a person has, because they'll talk about, like, I remember more than once getting emails where dudes were like, yeah, that part in the back of the book that's like the telephone book that tells you what page everything is on. And I'm like, the index? You know what I'm saying? So, like, that, I mean, that's just clear evidence that this dude doesn't have books in the crib, you know?
Sure.
But he's got the hip hop book because it's a subject matter that he digs, and that's pretty cool. That's gratifying. I like that part, and that's my thought is like, nature abhors a vacuum, so fill this little gap, and I'll talk to all these people here when everybody else is serving people over there, and it's really worked out. And at the time that this book came out, stuff started happening, like Raina found her niche and filled a vacuum that was being completely untapped and had great success. Gene Luen Yang was doing his thing, the big publishers started getting into the game a little bit more and started to create projects. It felt like they created projects of differing subject matter to try to like fill those gaps. So that stuff was really establishing 10 years ago. And we've given everybody a decade, to like see how this all shakes out, establish your structure in terms of business and everything. So like this book is going to like slide right in, and the price point is perfect. Like I have that like Lost Girls top shelf book. It's $50 and it'll be the same amount of pages. It's oversized. It has some gold on the cover and shit. So I have a lot of confidence we're going to keep that price down. And when we talked to those retailers and they heard that $50 price, like they were so stoked. Like
silver dollar eyeballs.
Totally.
Whenever you rolled out $50, you could see them in their head almost calculating like, yep, this is going to sit up by the cash register all through holiday season or while supplies last.
And that's the thing. like we got to go to press. A function of having the cheaper price is freight. That's a lot of books. That's a heavy book. Thousands of pounds. So we're tons of pounds of comics are coming to America to be distributed around, and we're going to press reasonably soon. With that in mind, that we don't need it till October, so they could print them up, and it could take its good old time sitting on a vessel coming across the Pacific or whatever to get to America, and that's how we can keep the freight costs down, so that we can keep a cheap price. But you hit the nail on the head. We have to gauge the response. And what happened with Hip Hop Family Tree initially, we could not keep it in stores, and it was supremely frustrating to me with Fantagraphics because they miscalculated. They didn't realize I'm not just like a regular cartoonist who's like sitting in a house doing their thing, who's new on the scene or whatever. Like I have this weekly platform on a website that has millions of viewers. I was able to take a look at something. They would show me something. One of the editors would show me something where, like, each week there would be like something like 30,000 people would go through all the pages each week, and like each strip would have, X number, but there would be like tens of thousands of people who would go through the back catalog within that week. And it's like, I guess they didn't believe me, or they just didn't consider, man. So like it could not stay on the shelves. It's in its like 9th or 10th printing, the first volume at this point. And when it came out, they let me know, oh man, it's sold out. Like that day, like we were at Phantom or something or Copacetic doing the signing, and got the call, hey, it's sold out. And I'm like, so the money tap is off now? Like now I have to sit here and wait. And then they got the reprints, and they kept that print run reasonably the same as the earlier. That lasted 2 days. So we're putting that announcement out right now. There's a typical way that these kind of things are rolled out, but we are not typical cartoonists. With the Cartoonist Kayfabe platform, we got a big audience, and my thought is, and I'm going, okay, if it's an experiment that deviates from the norm of Fantagraphics publicity, then it's my cross to bear. I will accept all consequences. But it just seems to me that it ain't a bad idea to shout from our pulpit here that I have this book coming out later this year, that I'm extremely excited about it, and that you need to get your hands on it by any means, and order early, because we have to have some idea about how many of these things to print, and there is no telling if it's going to just disappear right away.
Yeah, that would be my expectation given its track record.
Right.
Worth noting, I think you mentioned it earlier, but one thing that retailers asked about at Comics Pro, are you keeping the Treasury editions? Will they still be around?
Yeah, absolutely, man. We're keeping them in print. We're thinking of it. It's a different audience. There are very successful comic book YouTube channels that deal only in omnibuses, and they deal to an audience of only omnibus buyers. There are Reddit pages that cater to omnibus sized people. So it's like speaking that kind of comic language when we call it the Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus. But that omnibus audience is its own thing, and it's legion. It's a lot of people. The average like hip hop fan who isn't involved in comics culture, they're just seeing a big ass book that's $50 about like their favorite genre of music. So they'll be fine. They'll be into it. And comics is small enough of a niche that even at selling like maybe close to 1 million or whatever, that isn't a billion. There's still people that are getting introduced to it all the time. I get tagged on Instagram all the time with people who just discovered it. So this can be an ultimate statement for those people You know, like where you see the one big book, and like you go for that rather than filling the gaps in your collection of the big stuff.
Yeah, I imagine this being a very popular library trade. I know the Carnegie Library has tons of omnibuses. I think the hardcover big format is something that libraries have latched onto as well, not just collectors.
Yeah.
And this feels like it would be right at home in any library. Whenever the books came out, I think that was proof of the first edition of print, where it was like, it just keeps new audiences. You know, where you meet these people is going to be different every single day.
Totally. And I never felt comfortable with the idea that, like, my book has found its audience kind of thing. Like we've come up, there's been a lot of attrition over the past 20 years knowing each other here in Pittsburgh and stuff, and people have come, people have gone, and it's like you, me, and Tom have stuck it through. And I've heard that flawed logic from some of our friends who are like, oh, well, my comic found the audience that it's going to find.
Right.
And that's a ridiculous notion to me. Like, I couldn't believe I heard that, because you spend so much time making the thing. It is your baby. Are you not going to nurture it? And then I think about, there was that Dark Knight Returns documentary with Frank Miller, where he was talking about, like, his comic, and it might have even been in the Eisner Miller book that we did on the channel, where he talks about, like, being proud of his babies, getting to grow up and celebrate a 10th birthday or a 15th birthday or 30th or something like that. And that's Hip Hop Family Tree for me. Like, it gets to celebrate its 10th birthday.
10 years, damn near a generation, too. It's a whole new generation that you get to put this book in front of as well.
Totally. And I'm very excited about it. This is our year for that. You got the Princess of Poverty book coming out reasonably soon. We'll do a video on that to talk about the genesis of Street Angel and all of that good stuff. But had to let the Kayfabe audience know we've built this great platform. It's been a while since I sat in front of the camera to talk about, like, a new big book that I'm excited about, and hope everybody supports the project.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see it come out this year, man. It feels like the next wave.
Totally, man. So thank you guys. Hit my link in the description below. You could pre-order right away. You got a good shop that will hold on to it, that'll reserve you a copy. Then by all means, use your comic shop. I need to make this work as convenient as possible for any customers to get their hands on the thing. And we appreciate the support of our audience here on the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel, because it keeps our videos coming out on a very regular basis. We don't sell comics, we don't make videos. It's kind of as simple as that. And with that in mind, I'll give the marching orders, Jimmy, if you don't mind.
Hit it.
Read more Hip Hop Family Tree comics and buy the new book.